I'm going to record about 10 seconds of just him making that noise so I can edit it out later. Oops. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Once and Future Parent. Today it is myself, Matthew Fox, my co-host Mandy Kaplan, and and because Pete cannot be here, instead we're joined by Penn. Penn is my little youngling. You will hear him. I hope to edit most of the noises of his sucking on a bottle out of the podcast, but if you do hear it, that's just him giving his approval or disapproval to what we're talking about today. And what we're talking about today is continuing our conversation about Parenthood, the movie from the 80s. But I will just give a quick story. Yesterday I went and got this baby a passport, or at least started the process. And it turned out there's an awful lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
And getting a baby to hold still for a passport photo is quite difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Although he looks better in his passport photo than I ever did in any of my driver ID or passport photos. So that's a little frustrating. But,
I don't mean to be shallow, but he is a ridiculously good-looking baby.
well, thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate that greatly. Yeah, do you remember the first time you had to go get him like a passport or some other kind of government thing?
Yeah, but he was 4 or 5 when
Okay.
we did like a family trip to Mexico, and it's just a lot of red tape and annoyance, but
Yeah,
wasn't too traumatic.
that's good. Yeah, it was fine. We scheduled appointments. We don't have to go wait for 2 hours, which is probably for the
Right.
best.
Right.
But so let's continue our conversation on the movie Parenthood. We had a lot to say about it last time, but there was a couple of big storylines we didn't get to talk about. One of which is about the character of Jason Robards. Jason Robards, the actor who plays him. This is the father of the Steve Martin and Diane Weiss characters and all the rest of them. I should really look up their name. Hold on.
The character names, I'm on it.
Okay. I'll take that again once you got it.
So Jason Robards plays Frank,
Frank.
and Tom Hulse plays Larry.
Larry. Okay. And what was Steve Martin's character's name?
Gil.
Gil?
Gil and Karen Buckman.
All right. So picking back up that discussion, last time we talked a lot about Gil and Karen Buckman, and this time we want to focus a little more on, but the story we hadn't really gotten to talk about is their younger brother Larry and their father Frank, because there's a whole lot more that's going on. As we talked about, a lot of what Gil is dealing with is trying to undo what he sees as the mistakes his father made. And I really like that we got to see both that story, like we got to see Frank through Gil's eyes, but now in Larry we get to see both Frank kind of learning a lot more about that. Talk more about that story and Jason Robards playing Frank and what you loved, how that affected you.
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that you and I both have only children. So we will never face treating, or not never. I don't know if you plan on having more. I shouldn't say that. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, there's no comparing. There's no,
Yeah.
our first child was this kind of a baby. But Larry gets real special treatment because by the time he's up and coming, he can fuck up all he wants. And Frank is just going to cover for him and give him a safety blanket at all twists and turns. And I found it so moving when he knows Larry is just a fuck up. He knows it. And
Mm-hmm.
Larry takes his car to, quote, get it appraised. And he says, I'm not a schmuck. And he knows what's happening.
Yeah.
And he also knows he's going to swoop in and save him like he does every time.
Yeah, it's really a story about how Larry is not only the youngest, but I think significantly younger than the other two,
Mm-hmm.
maybe by like 8 or 10 years. And I think because of that is, he's the spoiled one. And I think his older siblings resent him for that a lot. Gil does. And we really see that there's a real difference between the two that the father's probably had a lot to do with, because the father, he really believes in entrepreneurship and going out and making your own mark and starting things. And Gil has had a perfectly successful career. He's a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer. He is struggling to make partner, and it's not
I
going.
don't think he's a lawyer. I think he's in marketing or advertising. But
Okay, well, yeah,
he's
he is.
dazzling clients. So
Yeah,
could
he's
be
at a firm.
anything. They keep it vague.
Yeah, it's pretty vague. You're right. I probably just assumed lawyer, but he's working in an office. He's working his way up. He's having some struggles, but he's going. And Larry has no respect for this at all, and
Mm-mm.
calls him out and says, like, I could never be like you. I can never be the boring one. And you see Frank kind of encouraging this. And To me, though, this is really the movie where this is the part in their story where Frank comes to, I think, at least realize what's happening with Larry, because Larry shows up. He says everything is better now. Everything is fine. He's got this great idea, and he's got this young boy with him that is his son, who was
Hmm.
dropped on him by some woman who'd been in his life at some point in the past. At first, Frank is not super excited about this. The kid is a kid of color, and I think there's some latent racism there and things like that. And over the course of the story, we realize that Larry is in trouble with some gamblers. That's why he almost took his dad's car to sell it. And he says, like, Dad, look, you got to help me out. You got to bail me out. And his father comes up with a plan. And he says, okay, I will bail you out. But if I do this, you've got to stop. You've got to come work for me at the store.
Right.
He basically is like, I'm going to set you up on a path to have a nice, safe life like I did, like your brother does.
Hmm.
And I think he really hopes that he's going to turn things around with this.
Yep.
And what Larry says is like, okay, well, sure, that sounds great, but I've got this one other plan. It's
Hmm.
emeralds in South America.
And if it
Loan me
doesn't pan out, we'll put the Frank Buckman plan into place.
exactly, and it's just
Oh.
the exact same reassurances of, we've seen a lot of movies, and a lot of people have lived this life of having a addict or a junkie or something like that in the family who just is always trying to get more money out of you, or I'm gonna start that whole thing again. A lot we've seen a lot of times in movies where the person is a drug addict or an alcoholic, and they're always trying to get money out of the rest of the family. This is that same story.
Yeah.
Gambling seems to be his addiction instead of drugs
Yes.
or alcohol,
Right.
but it's the exact same. And
Yep.
is a testament to how good an actor Robart is that he doesn't say almost a word as Larry is saying this, but you just see on his face the recognition of it's never going to change.
It's never
And
going to change. Yeah.
you're right, he does sweep in and once again give him the money, but he also says this is the last. I'm not going to do this again. And in a really sad but I think very effective scene, he says to Cool, Cool is the name of Larry's son. Larry leaves, and Cool, he says, "Do you want to live with us now?" And Cool says, "Great." And Cool says, "Is my father ever coming back?" And he says, "No."
No.
And yeah, that is such a hard moment because it's a moment of him recognizing that his son can't be saved.
Yes. And it's a very quiet scene, which I love. It's
Mm-hmm.
just matter of fact. And in a way, maybe I'm just thinking of this now. Frank is realizing, well, I do get another shot at this. I
Yeah.
can raise this boy cool and not make the mistakes I made with Gil and the girls and Larry.
Yep.
It's really beautiful.
And I think tied to that is he has a nice scene with Gil as well, where he
Mm.
sees Gil trying a different kind of parenting with his own son around baseball, especially. And there's kind of a moment of him recognizing like he wasn't a good parent to Gil.
Yep.
And yeah, I think often in movies like this you want the big catharsis, and it seems like in a lot of ways like a movie like this everything should wrap up really neatly with a bow. And it's very clear that's not what they're doing in this movie. And it feels like everyone has turned a corner, but it isn't perfect. And it's just this is the reality they have to live with.
Well, that's one of the beautiful aspects of the film. We talked about the roller coaster speech that grandma makes.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this movie, everyone is in a really good place. But the movie is letting you know this is fleeting.
Yeah.
This euphoria of everybody with their babies and all the families laughing and, grandpa's handing out cigars and it's
Mm-hmm.
great. But don't get used to it. Don't get comfortable because you're going to wake up tomorrow to something that's going to pull you right back down to earth. But it allows us, I think the overall lesson of the movie is enjoy those moments. Just,
Yeah.
count your blessings. And yes, everything is beautifully wrapped up in a bow for
Yeah.
now. It's
But
all
yeah, you're right.
fleeting.
Because
And
like I said, I mean, because we don't know what's happening to Larry off screen. He's not in that
correct,
final shot. He hasn't come
correct.
back home. And
And the downs, the downturns are fleeting too.
yeah.
Kevin has so many meltdowns in this movie, off screen and on. And when you are in a meltdown, heads up, Matthew, it's excruciating to watch your kid suffer and to not
Oh,
be
sure.
able to flip a switch and fix it. But you
Mm-hmm.
have to sit there and tell yourself, this will pass. This is not forever. Kevin will recover from his screaming meltdown about the retainer.
Right.
But you know, it's all the ups and the downs are fleeting and should be appreciated.
Yeah.
That is my lecture for today.
I've enjoyed coming to your TED Talk. Well, and
Well,
go ahead.
nope, I'm ready to transition us from the movie to how it's relating to something I'm going through, but you wanted
Sure.
to
No,
stick
go
with
ahead
the
because
movie.
what I wanted to talk about is sort of how we feel as parents, both before having kids and now seeing it again with kids about Frank's decisions and all of that. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, thankfully mine is not heavy or scary right now, but Casey, 15 years old, sophomore in high school, we went to back to school night, and hearing the amount of work and how high the expectations are on these
Mm-hmm.
kids in their sophomore year gave me anxiety, right?
Right.
This woman starts and she says, "Good morning. This is actually a college course. And I expect this, this, this. And if they don't pass their AP test, nothing else matters. And college boards are looking at these grades." And I was like, oh God, oh God. Like, this is
That's a lot.
real pressure. And Casey is a very bright, hardworking, ambitious person,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think he can handle all of this alone. He's in several AP classes, and this is all new. And so we've had issues in the past with executive functioning, which is a
Mm-hmm.
term I was not familiar with. So I just want to explain to people it has nothing to do with your intelligence or your ability to pass a test, but how well you manage your time, how you manage your workflow. And Casey was piss poor at that when he was
Mm-hmm.
in sixth grade, and he was always losing papers or thinking he turned something in but didn't. So we've worked a ton on executive functioning. But what ends up happening is Casey will miss an assignment and not say anything. Oops, miss another one, not say anything. And now we're dealing with a terrible grade rather than coming to us when it's like, hey, I didn't get this assignment in. What do I do now? Right. And like Larry doesn't go to Frank the first time he loses a big bet.
Mm-hmm.
He's only going when they're going to kill me with pain, Dad.
Right.
And so I said to Casey, I don't want you to let this slip like it has in the past. I want to stay on top of it. Let me check everything with you every night.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting from friends is you can't do that anymore. He's 15 years old. He
Mm-hmm.
has to make these mistakes. He
Yeah.
has to get the zeros in order to fix it. And I keep wanting to swoop in and be his safety blanket.
Yeah.
It's really
Well,
hard.
it really is. And at first, I'll admit I was a little curious what the connection was going to be. But and at first I thought it was something else, and we'll go into that one as well. But I really see what you're talking about because for me, that's the heart of the whole Frank story. Is you hear all the time you have to let kids fall down
Mhm.
so that they can get back up.
Mhm.
But if they're standing on the edge of a cliff, no, you shouldn't let the kid fall down. You have to
Right.
save them. Like it seems like in all of it, there's this idea of the lesson that they learn will be worth the bruises that they get from falling down. But how do you find that line? But if it is okay, I'm going to let him discover on his own that drinking a whole bunch and then borrowing the car is a bad idea.
Right. You
Well,
can't
no, the
do that.
potential danger there is
Right.
high enough that that's not worth a lesson. And it really sounds to me like the school is really not helping you with this idea of, oh, he gets a bad grade in 10th grade or ninth grade, whatever it is, and his whole college career is ruined. And,
Not that extreme, but yes,
yeah,
when you take AP courses, they count towards your college
right.
applications. That's a
Yeah,
fact.
yeah,
It's so, and I don't know how dire that is,
yeah,
right? It is not cliffside dire. I'm aware.
right.
I get it. But he wants to go to a good college. So if he just has some missteps
Hmm.
and isn't doing the work incrementally, steadily every day that he has to do to pass the AP test, then have I let him down or has he let him down? And how extreme is that consequence?
Right.
when his dream school says you didn't have the grades.
Right.
And I believe in plan B, which
Mm-hmm.
will be a whole other topic, but I do believe in plan B. So then it'll be like, well, now you got to come up with a different dream school, and
You're
wherever you
referring to
end
the
up going,
metaphorical plan B, not the medical plan B here, just to be very clear.
like Medicare.
Yeah, no, plan B is in like after not in
Oh, oh, oh,
that
birth
joke. Yes.
control.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
No, I
No,
hear you.
yeah,
And it's one of those things where I feel like there's so many different levels at which you can look at it. You know, you can look at it with him about like I remember I had very high aspirations for school, and I was really a Ivy League or bust kind of kid. And I went to a school where they were proud that 60% of their graduating class went to the Ivy League.
mm,
And so I went to a school that was still, forgive me, I'm bragging here, I don't mean to be, but that's kind of the point of the story. I went to a school that's still incredibly highly rated, a small liberal arts school in the East Coast, but I felt like a failure of going there. And I
because it
remember,
was an Ivy League.
no, it was one of the Seven Sisters. Um, it's called school called Vassar, and
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's exactly it. Like in my head, Ivy League or bust. So only going to one of the 20 top schools in the nation instead of one of the top 10 or top 5, I was a failure. And
Hmm.
I think very rightly got my ass kicked, metaphorically, by a lot of people who were like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You went to one of the best schools in the country."
Hmm.
Um, but also, like, it would have been fine if I'd gone to a state school, and like, so that's there's a whole rant I can go on that you know far more than I do about how much pressure there is to go to the very best school. But I think that more than anything, what you're getting at is there's this question that we always have to wrestle with of what is the consequence? What is the bruise that's going to happen of falling down? And how do we help him deal with that?
Right.
Because to me, the other key part of your story, I think, and this is the one that I keep hammering on but I know it's not going to be perfect, is it seems to me that so much of the harm kids get into is because they get into a bad situation because of a decision they think that their parents will disapprove of.
Hmm.
And now, instead of asking for help with the situation,
It snowballs.
it snowballs because they don't want their parents to know about the bad decision.
Right.
And
Right.
I
Yeah,
was
he
focused.
can't come to us and say, I got a 0 on this one assignment
Right.
because he's embarrassed or knows that we'll say, why did you get a 0? How did you let that happen?
Right.
So then he's certainly not going to tell us about 2.
Right. And I can very easily sit on my high horse and say, oh, well, just so what you have to do is make sure the kid feels comfortable telling you about the first 0. But the fact is, I'm sure you're doing everything you possibly could to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not enough. And sometimes it is hard. And, I think, I don't know, to me, so much of it's about a lesson about control, and just like him learning that the way his brain works, one of that top schools might actually be the right place for him, which doesn't mean he's in any way not the most intelligent in the world, but
Right.
or it might be, but it that he has to learn new things or
But could he look back and say, why did you, I needed your help. Why weren't you checking, online? There's all these portals. You'll get there. It's so different than the
Mhm.
olden days, right? I'm supposed to go in and I can see, oops, he turned that in 2 days late and he shouldn't have. And,
Yep.
oh, he didn't do very well on that quiz. But if I do that every single day, I'm not letting him, you know,
Yeah,
have
but
his
then
educational experience.
if you find the perfect way to do it, what's he going to talk to his therapist about? I mean,
There will always be something.
I say that flippantly, but I feel like, and again, you and I are having this conversation, and I'm used to being a person who gives advice, and so I'm very much trying not to fall into that as we just have this conversation.
Right.
But I think that that's also to me, in a situation like that, I think I would always want to try to be as honest and direct with my child, with Penn or whoever it might be, other kids I might have, about, hey, here's what I'm wrestling with. What do you think would help? What do you want?
Yep.
And saying like, look, I think we can do these things to help. In a lot of ways, I wish Pete was in this conversation because I don't know if this is true for Casey, but executive dysfunction and ADHD are often very linked, and those are things he talks about a lot.
Mm.
And a lot of the stuff that works with ADHD can help with other things that help with other kinds of executive
Mm-hmm.
function. But also, a grade now matters, but also he's what, a freshman or a sophomore?
He's a sophomore.
Sophomore. So he's not a senior yet. Um,
Correct.
and I will say that I failed. I didn't fail, but I got really bad grades on 2 of my courses in sophomore year,
Mhm.
and it kicked my ass, and
Mhm.
wound up doing much better in my junior and senior year.
Right.
And so
True.
I do like, what are the consequences of that? Hold on a second. I got a
Yep.
coughing baby here. What are the consequences of it happening at sophomore year? Well, a lot less than junior or senior year. So maybe this is an okay time for him to get that bruise.
Yeah. I know somebody whose son uh kept a lot from them, and senior year was like, I failed 2 courses. I'm not going to get into college. Like, it was bad
Mm-hmm.
because of the secrecy and the not showing and the not reaching out as things started to slip.
Yeah.
So it's we're all improvising every day as parents. We're just improvising.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to have my Jason Robards moment of Casey and his kid, and then I say, you know, I regret my choices with you. I want to. I'm very honest with Casey. We are very honest about. Well, we've never been parents before.
Yeah.
We're just improvising, so we're doing our best. But what do you think would be the move here? And we talk about it because
Yeah.
it's we um was it on this podcast? No, it was on my podcast about freaks and geeks. On my
Love that show.
podcast, Make Me a Nerd, wherever you get your podcast. Um, about how different parents were even in the 80s. And my guest, Jeffrey Nicholas Brown, was saying grown-ups used to wear suits,
Mm-hmm.
like that was, and I joked they had mustaches and they knew everything.
Yeah.
And your parents would not sit and say, we don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
We're lost. We got to figure it out as a family. So that's a beautiful shift, I think.
Yeah.
But when you were young, didn't you think, oh, my parents understand the way the world works and they
Oh,
know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the um I think one of the most important things to learn is that your parents can't fix everything. And
Hmm.
there's a whole other rant I can give this about how I think this is actually a big part of religion, and the books of the Bible, for example, go through this process of how, the people are saying, at first it is, God, why do you make the rain fall? And later an acceptance of like, God can't stop the terrible things from happening. And I think there's a whole other religious thing I'm not going to get into, but yeah, as parents, I think that's as a young kid, you're like, Mom, why isn't there ice cream? And you don't understand that because the store was closed or your mom's paycheck bounced or whatever it is. You just know there was an ice cream and you're mad about it. And
Hmm.
then it's, I remember being like 6 years old or something, and we had tickets to a baseball game for my birthday, and it rained. And
Hmm.
I was so mad at my parents
Hmm.
because, of course, like, maybe I was even younger because maybe a 6-year-old should figure that out, or maybe I was just a dumb 6-year-old. I don't know. But it just felt like the kind of thing like, or why didn't they like look it up in the weather report and pick a different
Hmm.
day? It, we love finding someone to blame,
Yeah.
and I had a very rocky relationship with my father,
Yep.
and still think in many ways there are many choices that he made that were really bad, and wished he had chose differently, and that's a whole pseudo drama of its own. But I also think a lot of the ways, I think a healthy part of being a teenager and an adult is experiencing some resentment towards your parents about the
Hmm.
choices they made,
Hmm.
and coming to learn that they did their best or that they didn't do their best.
Right.
And that either way it's okay. And like, it would be much easier to make the movie with Frank just being the bad parent that every other parent could be compared against.
Hmm.
But what I think the true brilliance of the movie and of the Frank and Larry storyline is realizing that just as much as Gil and all the rest of them are doing their best, even though they don't know what they're doing, so is Frank.
Hmm.
And Frank's mistakes look a lot dumber to us because we now have 30 more years of parenting information.
Right.
And I'm sure that, we in 2025 look back at what Gil's trying to do in the 1980s and think it's so dumb. And of course, I guarantee you that in the next 20 years, we will have so much science about executive function
Hmm.
that will make all of the Caseys of the world look back at all of the Mandys in the world and go, oh my God, how could you not have known that here is the thing?
Right.
And you know what? He'll tell that story to a bunch of people, and He'll make a therapist rich, and he'll probably encourage a couple people into his bed because they'll feel sorry for him, and he'll just do what young people all the time have done, which is eventually come to realize you were doing your best. You know?
Well, that's one of the things about Parenthood. We talked about it when Gil imagines Kevin catching the ball and then thanking his dad for always believing in him at his graduation from Harvard or whatever it is, or ending up, having a violent meltdown because of his dad made him play baseball. The truth is, we are not that influential in our kids' lives. And if I swoop in and start checking Casey's work every single day for AP World, and he does great, and he sails through the AP exam, and he gets into Harvard. This is all completely hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to give me the credit for it.
Of course not.
That's just not how our brains work.
Mm-hmm.
If he fails the AP exam, there is a good chance he will say, I wish you would have been checking on my work every day.
Yeah.
Why did you let me get so far behind? That's human nature, unfortunately. So,
I mean, and that goes for everything.
yeah.
I have, I'm sure this would be the same if I looked up your podcasts, that there are some very positive reviews. But also, every time I screw up something with a sound or something like that, someone's going to let me know in my reviews. And far fewer people are going to tell me how much they liked it. And that's
Yep.
true about restaurants, like people.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny because what you're saying about how recognizing how little control we have, and I say that as I'm literally holding a baby in my arms who cannot keep his head up. He cannot support his head. He cannot feed himself. He cannot clean himself. I am responsible for every single thing that is needed to keep this baby alive.
He sounds wicked lazy, by the way.
Well, yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
he's lazy.
Oof.
He complains all the time.
Oof.
Sometimes he wants, factory-made food. Sometimes he wants farm-to-table. Like, it's all over the place. But I can understand that that's teaching me that I have complete and total control over everything that happens to this child. And that's not going to last. Already I have less. He's able to hold his head up a little bit more than he was when he was born. And a little, that was a little less 2 weeks ago and what it is today.
Right.
And now he can somewhat hold his head up, as I'm showing if you want to watch on the YouTube. And he looks very, very cute about it. It's probably going to spit up all over my hands right about now.
He's so cute.
Right?
Oh.
But I think that's just a part of the parenting, is learning that, like, we can't, a lot of times we can't fix, and a lot of times they're going to want to blame us. And
Yep.
part of I think, a lot of times people have very legitimate things to blame their parents for. And I think sometimes it's easier and healthier. Well, it is easier to blame your parents rather than take accountability for yourself. And
yeah,
there's often a middle ground of, you're a kid, you couldn't really take accountability. You start by blaming your parents, and then with a good set of friends or listening to a good podcast or probably paying some therapist an awful lot of money, you learn to figure out that your parents did their best. And if it wasn't good enough, that's still okay. And it's okay to resent them and to love them and to thank them and to blame them and all the complicated things,
which Larry can't. Back to my beloved Parenthood. He says, oh, that's just great, Dad. What did you always say? Make your mark. And Frank says, no, you heard me wrong. Because Frank was saying, make your mark, be a good person, right? Make good choices, take care of your loved ones. And what Larry heard was like, be a star, get rich quick.
Right.
It's but that's human nature. I hate to keep saying it, but that's the kind of person Larry is. That's his makeup.
And I think part of the point, though, is that Larry's not entirely right, but he's also not entirely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because what Frank says at the end that he meant, his other son, Gil, has been living that exact life.
Right.
And he probably did say a little too much, go out and do your own thing, or he said to Gil, he didn't say, Gil, good job, because Gil was doing a good job, so he didn't say anything. He just, reserved it for who he's critical of.
Yeah, he's not impressed by Gil the way he's impressed by Larry in all his flashy ways. But when push comes to shove at the end, he understands that Gil is the son he can be proud of and the one who went out there and made his mark.
Yeah.
In the best ways. I love this movie. I promise I won't keep performing scenes from it, maybe. I don't promise that. I take it back.
You know,
Cut the part where I promised I would not keep performing and
I
just change it to I will keep performing scenes from this movie.
I'm actually going to keep it in there because I'm going to declare a new drinking game for this podcast.
Okay.
Anytime Mandy
Quotes Parenthood.
quotes Parenthood, take a drink.
Gary.
Well, actually, no, because a lot of people drive when they listen to this podcast. So I don't know, honk your horn or do something like
Well,
that.
you don't drink, so it can just be have a drink of soda, water, coffee, whatever it is.
I don't.
I thought you didn't drink.
No, I mean I don't. Alcoholism is strong enough in my family that I'm very careful about how much I
Right.
drink.
Okay.
I've not been drunk since I was 20.
Okay.
But no, I mean I probably have a beer or a glass of whiskey or something like that at least once or twice a week.
Oh,
Yeah.
color me shocked. I thought I had heard you say because of the history in your family you don't drink.
No, I think I'm very careful to limit my drinking.
Mhm.
And I have been so for I've been drunk once in my life and I hated it and
Yeah.
never wanted to do it again.
Ugh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm with you.
All right. Any other last things you want to say about this movie?
Just that if you haven't seen it for whatever reason, or if you're thinking, "Oh God, I saw that once many, many years ago," it holds up. It's beautiful. It's worth it, and it's one of my top 10 all-time favorite movies. And I didn't realize how many things I wanted to really break open and explore until we did this.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I remember it as being a cute, fun movie about parenting with some decent ideas. And I mostly remembered as Keanu Reeves kind of, to me, this is where he transitioned from Bill and Ted's to doing real
Mhm.
acting.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad I got to rewatch it, especially at this point in my life, and just see like, oh my God, this is a phenomenal. And it's funny, I watched it with I'm polyamorous. I have a wife and a girlfriend, and I watched it with both of them, along with the wife's husband, my girlfriend's husband. And they're all a little bit younger than I am, and so they were all expecting another like, oh, this is one of Matthew's movies from the '80s that's not going to hold up. And they're all like, we like that so much more than we thought we would.
Oh, how can
So,
you not?
yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, this one's squirming. You need to go. So thank you all, listeners. Please check out Make Me a Nerd. Please check out the Ethical Panda podcasts, Superhero Ethics and Star Wars Generations. And please remember that you're probably going to resent your parents for something, and your kids are going to resent you for something, and that's just how therapists get paid. So keep therapists paid. Keep resenting your parents. Keep doing your best.
Say bye, Pen.
Bye, Pen.
Bye.